Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of TK's Tutorials. Today, we are looking at how to keep score. So we have this little demonstration on how to keep score, how to build some basic UI, okay? And so as you notice, I have the left and the right calculating a score every time the player collides, and then on the 10th collision, it says you win. So let's get ready to go. Let's get a blank Godot and get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is set up our scene. So this is a 2D scene, and we're going to start with the node 2D, and let's call this scorekeeper scene. Okay, now we're going to make a quick boundary, and for those of you unaware, you can also check out a couple other videos that I've made that really go in depth on how to make the boundary. But for now, we're just going to go quickly. So we're going to make a static body 2D, which tells Godot to recognize it as some sort of boundary. Then we're going to use some collision shapes, and we're going to make them rectangles, and then we're going to resize. Okay, so we're going to resize the first one. Then I'm actually just going to duplicate this. And if you hold shift while moving, we can resize that here. And then I'm going to add one more. And that shortcut for adding is just Command A or Control A. You're on a PC. All right, so I add another collision shape, call it a rectangle. Okay, and make our top, and then do the same thing. And drag, hold shift to lock the axis, and make our floor. Then we're going to just go back through really quickly and rename. So let's call this static body 2D a boundary. And then we can call this left wall or just left. We'll call it left wall. And this one we can call right wall. And then we can call this top wall. Bottom wall. You could call them floor and ceiling too. We just like to keep them. The naming is more so you can find things quickly. Okay. So now we have our boundary. Now, what else do we need in this scene? So as you saw, we have basically two blocks with an area 2D on top of each of them that are detecting the score. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to node back to our scorekeeper scene and go ahead and add another static body 2D. Okay, and let's call this one block 1. And we can add a collision shape to this. And we'll add a rectangle. Okay, and let's just move the whole thing over. Okay, and we'll resize it a bit. Again, I'm not worried about the scene creation more so as I'm worried about just making sure we have everything noted correctly. All right, and then we're just going to build out the area. Okay, so area 2D. And we have to assign a collision shape to that. Okay, and notice because I'm noding here, okay, now as you can see, it's noded to the inside of the collision shape, which is nice because I'm not starting here at the 0, 0. And then we can just group and move this above, right above the collision shape. And I'm going to resize the area 2D above the collision shape. Okay. So we can call this block 1 collision. So we know it's collision shape. And then we can call this block 1 area. block 1 area collision. Okay, so now we have all of this. Now we're just going to simply duplicate that. All right, grab everything and move it over here. Okay. To the right side of the screen. And this is just, again, a quick setup so that we can test our score. So we have block 1, okay, and then we have block 2, okay. You could also call it left block or right block, but I don't know, I like to number them. Block 1, block 2, okay, so we're just changing the 1 to 2 here. Okay, let's do the block 1 area, block 2 area. Now naming is essential, especially for the areas, because when you send signals and attach codes, you want them to reference the specific node, so the naming is important. Okay, block 2 area collision. Okay, so now we have our basic obstacles. Okay, we're not going to worry about. You could put color recs in if you wanted to see, but also we can just go up here to debug and hit visible collision shapes. We're going to save our scene, scorekeeper scene. And when you go to run, I'll move it over here to the viewport. Okay, now you can see that. You can see all of our areas or our collision shapes, which this is area 2D. You can see the collision shapes for the block. Okay, so we have basically our boundary and our blocks set up. Next thing we need to do is add a player. Okay, so we're going to add a character, body 2D, and we're going to attach a collision shape. And then we're also going to attach a sprite. Okay. And we'll make this a rectangle. And then we're just going to take our whole character and move him down here. And we'll resize our character. And then we're going to add our Godot icon. Okay, into our character, and just do a little adjustment to get them set. Okay. If you have trouble seeing the collision shape noted over top, just adjust the sprite. So if you put the sprite higher in the hierarchy, then you will see the collision shape, and you can adjust, make some adjustments. Okay. If you want to run your scene real quick just to check. Okay, so now let me slide it over. We have our player. We have our blocks. Great. Now, one more thing we're going to do is we're going to rename our character body 2D player. And we'll call this player sprite for the sprite 2D. And player CLSN for collision. Okay, so now we know who and what everything belongs to. Okay, so the last thing for our scene setup is labels. And to do this, we'll go back to our scorekeeper scene, and we're going to select control. So if you just type in control, and then we are going to add a label. We're actually going to just add 3 labels. So we're going to make one. Let's go to our control, and this is just going to be where all of our scoring happens. Okay, so inside of that we have and then after that, let's rename control UI. Because we're just learning some good practices here for game development and trying to keep things organized. Let's go to our label and adjust a few things. So we'll just put a placeholder here. We're going to call this left. And We can go to horizontal. We can keep that left, and then vertical. We can make that center. And what else? Theme overrides. So if you go to control down on the inspector panel and go to theme overrides, we can select font sizes, and we'll enable that and change that to 40. Okay. Now what we're going to do is rename the label. We just call it left label. Okay. And then we're just going to duplicate this twice. Call the next one right label. And then the last one we're going to call total label. Okay. So we're going to move our right label, and then we can just adjust our placeholder text once we get everything situated. So we're going to move this right label here. Let me move my total label out of the way. So I'm going to move total. Let's put total in the middle. So we'll put total here. Okay, and then we'll put right above the right. And then we'll put left above the left. And then I'm just going to change the placeholders so we know which one is which. Okay, we'll hit save, and if we just run our scene should be set up now. So you see that we have the left, we have the right label, we have a total, we have some sort of static bodies in the way, and we have a player. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is attach some scripts. So we're going to go up to our scorekeeper. Sounds like Martin Scorsese. We're going to go up to our scorekeeper scene and attach a script here. And then we are also going to attach a script to our player scene. And if you notice, the player is going to inherit a character body 2D, which is going to give it some template starter code. We're going to go into our jump velocity. So I'll zoom in here. That's line 5. Okay, and adjust that. Well, let's make that negative 800. And we can save. And now if we run our scene quickly, we should have some player controls. Nice. We have player controls. So our object can move around. So we have a nice working scene. Great. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to go attach a few signals. So what we want is when our player, let me go back to our 2D, when our player lands on the area, okay, we want it to emit a signal that's going to display a calculated score. Okay, and then when it gets to 10, we want it to say you win. So we need 2 signals that will update the score continuously when the player enters those areas. So the way to do that is we're going to go to block 1 area, okay, and we're going to go to our node and we're going to enter body entered and then connect, and we want to connect that to our scorekeeper scene. Okay. Then the next thing we're going to do is just go to block 2 and do the same thing. We're going to go to block 2, area 2D signals, and then go to body entered and connect back to our scorekeeper scene. Okay. So now we have our scripts attached and we have our signals connected. The last thing we need to do is just attach some code to the signal to give the instructions and update the labels. So let's look at our scorekeeper scene script. So we're going to go ahead and open that. So there's a couple things. We have a ready function. We have a process function. We're extending a node 2D, so there's going to be some parameters and classes associated with that. And then as you can see down here, we have two signals on block 1 area and on block 2 area. And when we enter those, they should update the score. So what do we need to do? The first thing we need to do is let's assign a few variables for our scene. So the first one we want to do is what's the win condition, right? So we're going to do an export variable. We're going to do an export variable so that you can change this whenever you'd like. So let's just call it variable win condition. Okay. And we're going to say that the win condition is you win, exclamation point. So we're initializing you win. Now, by making it an export variable, as soon as you hit save or click anywhere in the code for that matter, you should see an updated field and parameter called win condition because we just created it. And you can adjust it, but it's initialized with you win. So we'll leave that for now. Now, the next thing we need to do is add a few more variables. So let's think about this. We need a variable for the left score because that's going to be changing. All right, but we're going to initialize it at 0. We want to start at 0. Then we need a variable for the right score. Same thing. We're going to initialize that at 0. Okay. Then we need a variable for the left label. So we'll do left label. And we're going to make sure that it's only searching for a label. Okay. Now I'm going to just copy and paste this statement 2 more times. And I'm going to change this to right label and this one to total label. So now I have 3 labels, just like in my node structure, left label, right label, total label. And I've assigned variables in the code that will then look for these labels. Okay, the next thing we need to do is go to our ready function. Okay, and we need to initialize these labels. So what we do there is simply call the variable that we just made, left label, and we're going to set it equal to the left label in our UI. Okay, and as you can see, the structure in the code is $, which means look out to the node. Okay. And if you look at the structure, UI is the parent, and then left label is the child. Okay, so child, left label, child of the UI. Okay, and the $ means the reference, one of the nodes within this hierarchy. Okay, so underneath scorekeeper scene. So we can do the same thing for the other 2. Right label. Now we can drag it in, or we can simply just start to type. And if we type $UI, you can see that it's pre-populated. So right label. Let me fix this variable. And then the same thing for total label. We can do total label and UI. And we want to assign that to the total label. Okay, so what we've done is we've given the scene an initial score for each side, right? Left score 0, right score 0, and then we have 3 labels, left, right, and total. Okay, and we want to initialize that at the beginning. So that goes in our ready function. Now, in our process function, what we want to do is update the label every time our player enters the area. So in order to do that, we're going to need to come up with some type of function that will update the label. So what we can do is let's create this function first. And we're going to call it update label text. Okay. And inside of this function, we need to, and first let me just go ahead and pass this so that we're not getting errors while we type. So inside this function, we're going to create a variable first, which is for the total score. Okay, and that total score should equal the variable left score plus right score. Okay. So now what we're doing inside of this label text or inside of this function is we're telling the computer to store the total score and then check against this condition. So if the total score is less than 10, okay, then we want to continually update the label. So the left label dot, and then the property, which is the text. Okay, and then now we have to specify what we want it to say. So we're going to say left as a string, and then we're going to add the string of the left score. Okay, so as long as the total score is less than 10, then update the left label with the left score. Then we're going to do the same thing for the right label. So right label dot text equals right. Okay, and then we're going to update it with the string of the right score. Okay, and then at the same time, what we want to do is total label, okay, dot text equals total, and then again we're going to do a string of the total score. Okay, so we're storing a variable for the total score. Then we're passing this condition. If the total score is less than 10, then continue to run and update these items, okay, which is the left label text, the right label text, and the total label text. Now, what happens if we reach 10? So then what we can do is then say else. So we can say left label dot visible equals false. So we can disable the label so you won't be able to see it. We're going to do the same thing for the right label. And then for the total label, we want to print the when condition that we stated in the beginning. Okay. So you have the win condition, you win. As long as the total score is less than 10, we want it to continually update. And then if it's not 10, get rid of the labels and say that you win. Okay, then we can take this pass out. We don't need that anymore. And the only other thing now we need to do is update this label every frame. Okay, so it'll continually update. It'll look for it. and run every frame. Now, there's one more thing we need to do. We need to add a function that will also check for the win condition, right? So what we can do here is we'll add a function and let's call it check for win. Okay, and we can actually just copy. We're going to use this total score variable again, but we're going to call it and define it inside of this function. Okay, so total score equals left score plus right score. And now what we want to say is if total score equals 10, print win condition. Okay, so now we've basically used two different ways, and I'm sorry, I did not write that way. I signed that. That should be equals. If you look at our code, basically in two of these functions, what we've done is we're going to display a win condition if the total score is not less than 10. So as soon as it hits 10, it's going to display a win condition. And then also in our output, we're going to check for a win condition and print win condition, the same thing, if as soon as the total score equals 10. Okay? So what we need to do now is just connect our signals, and we're done. So if we look at our signals, we have our block 1 area. So what we want is if the body is character body 2D, right? So if a player enters that area, then we want to increment the score by 1. Okay? And then we want to also print the left score in the output. And we want to check for this win condition. Okay? So again, as soon as the block hits the area, we're checking to see if it's a character body, and if it is, increment it by 1, print the new score, and check for the win condition. Again, because as soon as the score equals 10, we're going to print win condition. So we can copy this and enter this into the second signal, and we're just going to change our variable. So if body is character body 2D, now we want to change the right score and print the right score, not the tight score, the right score. Okay. So let's go ahead and quickly just run our scene. And I'm going to slide it over here. So now if you look, we're on the left, and it counts 1. Right counts 2. And you see the total updated at the same time. Okay, and now it says it displays you win. And if you look at the output, again, the same things are being displayed. The left count, the right count, and the win condition. And that's it. So it's not a lot of code. Doesn't take a lot. It's really just connecting your area, 2Ds, and then writing in how you want the score to, one, be displayed and update itself, and then how you want the score to be incremented. And then also the last thing you can do is just check for what you're doing when you display a win or lose condition. So that's it. Thanks for stopping by. Again, stay creative.